Hi everyone, welcome to the Mind Blown Zone, episode 53, part 1. This one is called The Transitional Era Toward the Charter of Freedom. Complicated name, but you'll see what it means imminently. Here with Brad, how you doing?
Strangely, never better today. How about yourself?
Never better, mate. Why not?
Here you go.
So, you want to... Okay, I'll read the bumper script and then we'll comment on a bit more on what the title means, okay?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Here we go. What if the choice isn't between the current system and chaos? Tonight, we're mapping the path from captured institutions back to what was actually designed, a republic of servants, not rulers. We'll cover the consciousness shift already underway, why you can't bribe what you can't print, and how parallel systems are quietly replacing every failed institution, from money to media to law enforcement. You don't storm the castle. You don't fight their system on their terms. You build alongside, let people migrate, and watch the old structure collapse from irrelevance. The revolution isn't televised because it doesn't look like revolution. It looks like millions of people quietly walking away. This is the transitional era, and it's already begun. I like the sound of that, Brad.
Yeah, I love it. That's perfect. Perfect setup.
Yeah. Do you want to comment on the meaning of the title of the podcast?
Yeah. So this all spawned from our previous podcast, which I can't remember the name of it now, but it was us introducing the. We were looking at what was it called? Do you remember? Sorry, I'll look at it
Charter for Servants of
Pathway
the
to
People?
Glorious Self-Governance. Pathway
sure,
to Glorious
the one before.
Self-Governance.
Yep.
Yeah. And so, and by the way, this all started, I think I had written down, Matt and I put ideas into a spreadsheet and, maybe interesting podcast topics. And I think I wrote something like the Constitution of the Free People or something like that. And Matt was like, that sounds interesting. Mm-hmm. And so we started working on that idea, and it slowly burgeoned into what's going to turn out to be 4 or 5 separate podcasts probably, because this idea, right, of how do we get to the place where we want to be from where we are seems ridiculous and impossible to most people, right? They just immediately think, well, crime will be everywhere and the bad guys will take over, and who's going to pay for the entitlements and the welfare, and it's all, you can't just wipe it all away. And we agree, right? You can't. You have to move away from it. And this what we're going to do today here, this transitional era presentation, is going to be look at some of the things that need to change, are changing, or are going to have to change in order for us to get back to at least where our founding fathers in America started us out at in 1789. Could things even be better than that? Sure, right? We're not discounting that we could go towards even a greater utopian society, but let's be it's already unrealistic for a lot of people to think of what we're about to present. So we're hoping that this presents in such a way that people at least can see. I can see the pathway could take us in this direction. Yeah, you with me so far?
Yeah. Is it time to explain how we're going to do these particular videos in this podcast, the multiple parts?
Sure, you can do that, or I can do my notes real quick, whatever you want to do.
Yeah, sure. I'll just intro this. Okay, so let me just do a little reveal of the text here.
Okay. Wasn't there yet.
And scroll it down to where we're going to go. Okay. So the way we're going to do this is I feel like I might want to edit something up, Brad. I feel like I've messed up here. Okay. Because I've revealed it, and I feel like you don't want the notes to be seen. Is that right?
Yeah, I was just gonna rattle those off, right? But that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Whatever, man.
Okay. Well, let me just go back. So, and let me just ask that question again, and I'll edit this out. Okay. I'll just go like this. Okay. So, Brad, you've got some notes to cover before we dive right in.
Mm-hmm. Shall I start?
Let me just say that again. That was your lead in. Don't worry, I'll edit this out. I'll speak, then you respond to me, and the podcast is gone, right?
Okay.
So, Brad, you've got some notes to cover just before we dive right into the content?
Right. Right. Want me to knock those out right now?
Yeah, yeah, please.
Okay. So just a couple of things to set this up. Right. First of all, what happened here was I worked with AI for a couple of weeks really in building what I call Brad's lawful framework, based on all the research I've done over the years. And I asked Claude to, that was the AI I used, to summarize it into what we could eventually call 40-minute segments. It looks like it's probably going to be two 40-minute segments of bullet points. So he basically took all my stuff and we picked like 10, categories, and he turned it into like, 3 to 5 sentence paragraphs for each. So that's what we're working with here today. It's all summary material, and sure, we could get into greater details, but the idea is to present this as a holistic thing and then let people, respond to it with their questions or objections and so forth. So that's my first note. My second note is it's really important, and people don't understand this. When the founding fathers founded America and the Constitution and the whole 9 yards, they were getting away from the King of England, right? King George III. They didn't want to have a tyrannical rulers ruling over them. So they created this thing called the American government, and that's what we can call our de jure American government, meaning it was lawfully enacted by the people, right? Everybody agreed this is what we want. And that ran until 1865, and then we have the Civil War and Reconstruction. And what came after that, what was reconstructed, was the American government. It got turned into the federal government, and that happened by military conquest or warfare. So it was not lawful by the people. It was by the conquerors who came in and were the victors in the Civil War. And that became what today we have as a de facto government, not de jure, de facto. And so they rule by force and violence, right? And we can see that everywhere we look. And that is basically, we went from sovereignty to rulership. And the whole basis of this podcast series is, how do we get away from this tyranny back to sovereignty? You with me there?
I'm right with you.
All right. And last quick note. I tried to figure this out with Claude and with some other AIs, and it's hard to figure out how many Americans are dependent on the government. We have some form of federal government benefits. And it's really hard to figure out because a lot of people get multiple ones. So you can say, 20% get Medicaid, and 30% are on food stamps, and 80%, 60% are on Social Security. But some have all of them, right? So it's hard to figure out. But it looks like it's about half. As crazy as that sounds, it's pretty close. And that's straight out of the Communist Manifesto, where the goal, right, is to get the people dependent on the government so they're helpless. And so that's just an important point that I wanted to make as we go through this, is even though it seems difficult to say, how do we get rid of Social Security and Medicaid and Medicare and food stamps and all of that, you can't just wash those all away. It'd be crazy. And you're right. So there's a gradual movement away from that that'll actually show up in a couple podcasts we talk about. But I just wanted to get those three things out of the way. So any questions?
No, I totally follow you. Okay, so I'll just mention. Okay, so we're gonna go into this content that Brad has prepared, and he has it written down in a document, right? So I'm gonna reveal this document now. Just shrink my video down there, and now Brad is basically gonna step us through this content, right? So he's gonna say it to me. This is stuff that we've discussed in general, here and there in our many conversations, but this is the first time I'm hearing this content as it's being prepared. So I'm going to have an authentic reaction to this, and I'll just let you know that I'm not here. Like, if you listen to this podcast, you know that Brad and I just don't just agree with each other on every single thing. Like, we share a similar worldview, overlapping worldview, but I'm not here to just agree on every single thing, right? So I'll definitely be pushing back. Not that we'll be getting into a big argument or anything like that, but I'll if I disagree, I'll be letting it known. All good?
That makes it fun. Perfect.
Okay. Let's do it. Take it away, Brad.
Let's try this out. So section 1, and we talked about this in our last podcast, but let's do it again so it's very clear. Opening preamble: anarchy, not chaos, right? So the false binary you've been sold. You've been taught two options: the current system, flawed but stable, or Mad Max hellscape. This is manufactured. The actual spectrum runs more totalitarianism through our current mess to constitutional republic as designed to minimal state to voluntary cooperation. We're not proposing the far end, we're proposing a return toward what was designed, with improvements based on what we've learned about corruption.
Okay.
Any comments?
All good by me? No.
Okay. And so the next bullet is etymology as a weapon, right? So anarchy comes from Greek, right? An is without, and then archos is rulers. It means no rulers, not no rules, right? I think people get lost on that a little bit, so that's a good point to make. You follow rules every day, no ruler imposed. I don't know if you wrote that right. Don't cut in line, don't steal from neighbors, treat others as you'd be treated. The golden rule predates every government. Rules without rulers isn't fantasy. It's how humans operated for millennia. Yeah?
Yeah, right. I mean, rules existed before someone came along and said, I make the rules.
That's right. The golden rule, as the simplest and the most obvious. All right,
Yeah,
so the
unspoken
next point.
rules, unwritten rules.
Yeah, do unto others, right? You wouldn't. Why do things that you wouldn't want done to you, right? Very simple. All right, so the third point. The chaos you fear is what you're living, right? Rampant crime. Government is the largest criminal enterprise. Theft via taxation, counterfeiting via central banking, strong preying on the weak, civil asset forfeiture, eminent domain, bailouts for cronies, bankers, corrupt enforcement, qualified immunity, police unions, prosecutors with zero accountability. The chaos isn't coming, it's already here, wearing a suit and waving a flag. Well said.
Yeah. I mean, what I hear
comments?
people say is like, oh, if it was anarchy, it'd be gang warfare and the biggest, strongest, most violent gang would rise to the top. I was like, hello? What do you think we have right now?
Right, it's already happened. That's right. Okay, next point. Democracy, that word, is the spell. The word swap from republic to democracy wasn't accidental. Republic, rule of law, individual rights protected. That's what most people don't understand. Government as the servant, right? Democracy is rule of the majority, individual rights subject to the collective will. Government as the master. Every time they say our democracy, they're describing the cage, not freedom. Yeah?
Yep. Yep.
So important. And I mean, 99% of Americans and Australians and everybody else thinks they're living in a democracy, and it just ain't so. It's not what you know that gets you into trouble. It's what you know that just ain't so. Mark Twain. Okay. Number 5. The question that matters. It's not rules or no rules. It is who makes the rules and who do they serve? Currently, rulers make rules that serve rulers. Say that again. Currently, rulers make the rules that serve rulers. We're proposing rules that emerge from communities of people who must live by them. Accountability, skin in the game, neighbors, not bureaucrats. This isn't chaos. It's order that actually works. Comments?
Well, it's just funny how there's right now a federal government that makes rules for 300 plus million people whom the government has never met personally.
Right, and it's actually, I'm going to add this little aside in, right? The way it was designed, right, by the founding fathers, Jefferson and Madison and Monroe and all the Adams and all the good guys, right? They designed the congressmen and senators, right, to go to Washington, D.C. 1 month out of the year with no pay, I might add. And it was their job to make up the rules, right, that the federal government, or American government at that time, was supposed to operate under as per the wishes of the people that representative was representing. Right? They didn't set it up so that the congressmen and senators would go make up rules that their constituents had to live by. You see the difference?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well,
that's what everyone thinks, though, right?
Yeah, it's everybody has been
they're
brainwashed.
lawmakers. They make law. Like, what, do you think we shouldn't have lawmakers?
Right. They literally went from we're the employers, they're the employees, and then they became the employers, and now we're their employees. That was the great switcheroo that happened between 1865 and 1945, basically.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
somehow
just in
or
between
another,
generations, right? Like,
we just
people forgot.
we just slept through it. Somehow. I just still haven't figured out how that happened, but that's the idea. is that all those congressmen, right, or their job was only to ensure the efficient running of the government. That's it. That's what they made up their rules for. That's what statutes were for. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, all clear there.
All right. Let's jump to section 2 then. And this is my most critical section, really. It's like none of this works, as we've discussed in many previous podcasts, without the collective consciousness of humanity rising. Right? We've discussed David Hawkins' scale many times before, and if you're under the 200 level, which is some forms of fear, judgment, pride, anger, desire, all that's good stuff. Right? If you're down, vibrating in that region, you cannot discern truth from falsehood. And in truth, you don't even really try. You're so worried or angry or whatever about something that you're just so focused on your own survival that you don't even stop and think, is what I'm being told by my rulers even true or accurate, right?
Yeah, I think there's some there's some C.S. Lewis quote about, if you wanted to control a population, you just make them so afraid that all they cared about was their survival.
There it is. And that's exactly what is going on and has been going on since time immemorial, really. Just different flavors of it, right? Different costumes, but the same result, right? So my first bullet here is none of this works without awakening. And that's, the big part of what our podcast is all about, right? Every reform we'll discuss requires a population that wants it. You can't impose freedom on people begging for change. The consciousness shift isn't one step among many. It's the precondition for all the other steps. So without tier 0, nothing else is possible. With sufficient tier 0, everything else becomes inevitable. Interesting.
Mm.
Yeah?
Yeah, I mean, like every single shift that we talk about in this transition is fueled by a consciousness shift first. Like we don't get a result in reality without a shift in consciousness first.
That's right. Because reality is a reflection of our consciousness. That's exactly right. All right, so it's already happening, right? The vaccine hesitancy. Pre-2020, you were a fringe, vaxxer, weirdo, you didn't care about your neighbor's grandmother, blah, 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 right? And here we are in 2026, just happened a day ago, right? Now nearly half the population, right, has some distrust of all the vaccine rules that are trying to be imposed upon us by the medical system, right? My sister works in a hospital, and she's like, half of all mothers are declining vaccinations for their newborns left and right. She's like, it's like half. Every other mother saying, "Nah, I think I'll pass." Now, that never would have happened without the COVID, calamity, right? So the conspiracy theories, right, are now mainstream. Like nobody looks at you cross-eyed anymore if you're vaccine hesitant, right? Which is remarkable that happened over the course of 4 or 5 years. So the legacy media is that hemorrhaging viewers, right? I like every month it goes down another couple 100,000, right? All the channels, the lefty channels and the righty channels, all their viewership is dropping, and all that's remaining is like the 55 plus demographic is the only one that's semi holding steady, right? All the other ones are just shrinking. Millions of viewers a year. There are podcasts. Like Candace Owens' podcast and Tucker Carlson's podcast get more views, right, on YouTube than Fox News or CNN. So that's pretty interesting. Mm-hmm. The spell is breaking in real time, not because we're convincing them, but because the lies are too obvious to sustain, right? And the reason they are is because consciousness is on the rise. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the more conscious one becomes, the more they can see truth from fiction.
Exactly. So I already kind of mentioned the Hawkins threshold earlier, but yeah, the above 200, discernment becomes possible. And my personal feeling is it's the 310 mark. So there's this, right, the 200 to 310 on his scale anyway. It's kind of the area where people aren't quite sure yet, right? They're coming out of the fear judgment narrative, and they're slowly dipping their toes in, higher forms of information and reasoning. And when they get above 310, that's where meaningful self-governance becomes realistic. And I think even Hawkins said that, right? Like we actually do need the structures in place that we have today for people operating below 200. Right? We need to, penalize them, punish them, and throw them in prison or fine them or whatever, right? Because they're operating in such a debauched state of consciousness. But as more and more people come up and out of it and get above that 310 level, now there's no need for the systems that we currently have in place. So there's a lot to be said about that. But it's clear that the system we're under today, all institutions are working in concert with one another to keep the population below 200, fearful, divided, and dependent. That's what's crashing as we speak. Yeah?
Right on.
So what's this next point? This is a Claudism here. Awareness spreads geometrically. One person sees through the illusion, tells 10. 3 of those, 10 investigate. They see it too. They tell 10 more. This is how paradigms collapse. Slowly, then all at once. Classic. We're in the slowly phase at the moment. It's been that way for, really since COVID started. It's starting to, still moving along, but it's speeding up. It's accelerating. The all at once is nearby. So the job of you, the listener, of course, isn't to wake everybody up. It's just to wake the next person, your friend, a family member, a coworker, neighbor, right? That's part of the 3-step process, spread awareness. So the math handles the rest, and we get to the 100th monkey effect when we least expect it, probably. Yeah?
Yeah, I mean, as long as you wake up 2 people, you're contributing to this exponential effect.
Right. If 1,000 people hear this podcast, right? I can't do the math, but not too long in the future, at least 100,000 people will be aware of some of the things that were said. And the idea of moving away from our current tyrannical democracy back to a sovereign republic isn't so far-fetched anymore, right?
Mm-hmm.
Last bullet here is my 3 rules. We've been over them 1,000 times. Number 1, become aware. Number 2, spread awareness. Number 3, withdraw consent and participation. Right? That's what we need. We don't need to storm the castle. We don't need to burn the politicians at the stake. We don't need to, rush in and collapse the whole system, because that would create anarchy, right? We're just building
chaos.
something parallel. Sorry?
You mean to create chaos?
Right. Well, oh, sorry. Yeah. And look at me. I slipped completely there. Good catch. Yeah. It would create chaos, crime, revolution, the whole 9 yards. So this thing isn't a revolution that's going to be televised, right? It is something that is going to happen just in the local communities, neighbors. Little things are going to get set up. People are going to stop feeding the system, and it's just going to collapse in that way, which is perfect, because as it is collapsing, parallel systems are being built, and people are migrating to those, so that when the final collapse does happen, there's already something else in place that picks up the slack. Yeah?
Oh, yeah.
All right.
All right.
So far,
Section 3.
Matt's in perfect agreement so far, but I bet it's going to follow down here soon. So here we go. All right. So this is the biggest section here. This is institutional reform, right? So this is where the controversy kicks in, and let's see where we get here. So the first bullet: you can't bribe what you can't print. So the basic entire corruption apparatus runs on infinite fiat, fake, fraudulent currency. Simple. That's what the dollar is, American or Australian dollar. So in order to starve the machine, you have to take away their fuel, which is their ability to print money out of thin air, which they've been doing quite successfully since 1914, to be exact. Now, Brad is going to argue that we need a gold standard. We need a finite form of money, which gold's been money for over 5,000 years. And you can't just print it out of thin air. Like, somebody actually has to do hard work and dig it up out of the earth and refine it and turn it into something that can be then used as a store of value. Matt, hit me.
Well, are you saying you need it in a transitional era, or are you saying you need it in finality?
No, this is pure transitional era here. Right? You got to get back to a place where whoever is in charge cannot corrupt it by producing millions and millions of more dollars or whatever the form of currency is to meet their goals. They're actually confined by the amount that they have.
Yeah, I think because we argued about this for about half an hour or something like that, but I think the main point that I was making is that I believe that if you just turn your back on them, that their currency will become worthless. Like less and less people will want to have a dollar or whatever, and it doesn't matter if they say, "Oh, we'll switch to Bitcoin." It's like, "Oh, you have Bitcoin? We don't want Bitcoin anymore." And I believe that all it takes is for everybody to just turn their back on all their offerings, and it doesn't matter whether we implement gold or not.
Yeah, yeah. The basic idea though is it has to be something that no one group of people has total control over, making more of, right? By the push of a button, by the pull of a
I
lever.
definitely agree with that. Yeah, and
So
you're
that's why.
introducing a gold standard as a method for that, and I just don't think it's the only way you could achieve that.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of different ways. We could have a chicken standard, right? Doesn't really matter if it takes if it takes 100 human hours to raise a baby chick to a full grown adult for laying eggs, then that's what the value of a chicken is now, and everyone's running around with chickens in their wallets. You get the idea, right? Something
Right.
convenient. Could it be a crypto? Sure, as long as it's not a crypto that has a infinite amount of supply, right? Then it's anybody can game the system at that point, right?
Yeah, except I think that you can just allow them to continue printing as many dollars as they want, as long as people awaken consciously, they desire dollars less, and ultimately, after the only person left asleep will be this one guy printing the money, going, "Look how many dollars I've got! Look at so many dollars!" And everyone's like, "Bro, no one wants dollars."
Right.
That's it.
Yeah. And this is happening little by little. Like a lot of states are having, gold depositories now, and some state agencies are taking gold and silver in payment, right? So it's impossible if nobody will take anything but dollars, right?
Hmm.
It's exactly like we'll talk about here shortly about the United States, the Kissinger and the Saudis. Why we put 250 military bases around the world is to make sure that nobody trades oil with the Saudis and the cartels with anything other than U.S. dollars, and that forced every country in the world to buy U.S. dollars.
Hmm.
Anyway,
Yeah,
all right.
yeah,
So
and it's interesting how the demand for the US dollar is created by the fear, right?
yeah,
So
you had to do it,
when the fear goes away, the demand for the US dollar will go away.
right? The last two guys to try it were Muammar Gaddafi and Saddam Hussein. Look what happened
Right.
to them. Unspeakable things happened to them. But yeah, that's what happens when you don't follow the rules of the hegemonic power of what was the United States empire, forcing everyone to use dollars. That's what made the dollar the world's reserve currency. Everybody had to have them to buy oil. Blah blah blah. Anyway, okay, the Cantillon effect. Some people have heard that, but that's the rigging mechanism, right? So those closest to the money printer get the new dollars first, right? They print them up for themselves first at full purchasing power. And by the time it reaches us, the masses, inflation has already eaten the value. It's not a bug, it's the design. So the Fed isn't incompetent, it's functioning as intended to transfer wealth from us to them with every printed dollar. Yeah?
That's interesting that this has a name, the Cantillon effect, because I kind of noticed this by myself and had a big conversation with Claude about it, figuring out how inflation, causes devaluation, and it's exactly that I figured out. Someone already did it though.
Yep.
Cantillon effect. All right.
That's the name of it. So what we're proposing again is parallel systems, not revolution. So we don't need to announce the gold standard on Monday. We don't need to end the Fed on Tuesday, right? We just need gold-backed alternatives operating alongside our current fiat. And it's voluntary adoption, right? People say, "Hey, I want to pay for my electric bill in silver." Or, I want to pay my property tax, even though property taxes are illegitimate, in gold or whatever, right? And the system will have to adapt to the masses saying, "We don't want to use dollars anymore." Say, "Yeah, well, we want our money, so we'll let you pay in dollars or silver." And that's kind of how it will work, right? As critical mass builds up until nobody wants to use fiat anymore and hold it because it's being devalued at such a rapid pace, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we don't overthrow or end the Fed. We just abandon it as a collective. There's nothing they can do
Hmm.
about it.
Yeah, and the
Simple.
way that starts, like, like it'll start with just individuals, like uh, someone bakes a cake and says, "You can give me some silver for it." You know,
Yeah. And
it'll just happen at the ground level first.
and it really is happening. And it's still kind of obscure and not very popular. But a lot of people say, well, if you want to buy my product or services, right, it'll cost you, $150 in cash, or you can give me $100 worth of silver.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I might add that to my company.
There you
Yeah,
go. Right. Because I
if you
mean,
can send me some
silver's been
silver,
going
mate.
up like crazy. Yeah, but yeah, they're like, what I really want is the real money, not the fake money. But if you want to pay
Yeah,
me in the fake money, it's going to cost you $50 worth of more fake money. So why don't you go get yourself some real money and pay me with that, and then you get a $50 discount, 50% discount.
that sounds great.
Yep, a lot of
I'm
people
gonna
doing
implement
that. Well,
that.
not a lot, but people are doing that. That have control of their own domain, right? So they're not, attached to the corporate government world and so forth. What's this next point? I don't even remember it. States as vehicle, right? So state level gold depositories. Oh yeah, I mentioned that. State issued gold backed instruments for interstate commerce. 10th Amendment end run, right? So Texas is already doing this. I think Tennessee and Florida are just about to do it. And nothing the federal government can do to stop it, right? They don't have authority over these states. It's just that the states are afraid of the federal government basically ginning up a fake narrative against them that they have been in the past. Like, well, if you do this, we're going to say, we're going to, reveal this incredible corruption thing and, blah, blah, blah. And they can do it because people were buying into the media narratives for decades. So that's how this will start to gain even more steam as the states are going to break away. As originally intended. They used to be independent nation states when the founders wrote the Constitution.
Hmm.
Yeah?
Yeah. I roughly agree with that.
So what this would bring us, right, when we get to the place where it's everything, the dollar, nobody wants it anymore, and they want other forms, right? It's immediate stabilization effects, right? So the government spending, right, is constrained to the revenue that they have in their coffers, right? There's no more infinite wars, right? Savings are rewarded instead of punished. So if you hold on to the gold and silver, it goes up in value as they continue devaluing by printing more currency. Bribery becomes traceable and finite, right? So you can see guy A gave guy B the gold instead of, just these magical digits in a computer database showing up in his Swiss bank account. So everything changes overnight, not because anyone commanded it, but because the cheat code stopped working. Yep.
Yeah, is this the thing where we were talking about where you wanted all the government spending to be totally tracked and stuff like that?
Yeah, that's what you really didn't like. But yeah, we're not going into that level of detail here, but that would be that's my it may be in the legal section actually. So
Right.
let's see if we
Well, I
get
think
there.
I can cover it easily, and it's just that like my main thing is you don't necessarily need some hyper-vigilant control mechanism. I really think that just the withdrawal of participation will do it.
Well,
But
yeah,
no
let's
need
let's
to
see if we
dwell
get
on it.
there. We
Okay.
we really had a long argument over this one, so we'll come back to it. Let's keep rolling here. So the media academia reform. Oh boy, this is it's hard to say which is bigger, the financial reform or the media academia reform. But this is as big in my mind, right? These are the brainwashing mechanisms, right? So the Ministry of Truth is already crumbling. Legacy media trust at historic lows. Mainstream now means what 30% or less believe, right? The cathedral is losing parishioners daily. We're not storming the gates, we're watching them rust off the hinges. The parallel system, which is the independent media, podcasters, citizen journalists, already has more reach and credibility than the mainstream media right now. And that's impressive. Yeah?
Yeah, it was pretty hilarious to see uh, Nick Fuentes. Not that I follow Nick Fuentes, and I'm not saying I agree or disagree. I'm just saying that I don't follow him. I'm not like a fan of people who like goes and like watches people and follows all their content. But it was funny to see Nick Fuentes putting all his content forward with Pierce Morgan you know, like that
Yeah.
would never happen. Like, and the type of stuff that he was saying, you would never get that seen by a lot of people just a few years ago.
Yeah, that's an interesting example, and I didn't watch it, but I think, if you think about what the cabal controllers thought, they thought that Pierce was going to have his way with Nick, and he probably demonstrated that he thought he could, and shut him down and make Nick look like an idiot. And I think the opposite happened, if I recall correctly. Does that sound about
Oh,
right?
absolutely. I mean, yeah, just yeah. Nick Fuentes completely dominated the whole argument. Yeah.
Right? This fringe, anti-Semitic young punk kid takes out this, legacy media, trusted voice, and it didn't work out the way they thought it was, did it?
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the main points we're making here. Like, no violence required, right? It just crumbles by spreading of awareness and conversation.
Right.
Ministry of Truth crumbling just by that.
With fact checkers, right? This was really evident 2013, 14, 15. This is when these fact checkers started to pop up. Simultaneously with all the mainstream media, online, articles took away their comment sections. They almost both happened at the same time, right? Because they were just totally losing. There's so many comments in the sections like, this is propaganda, BS, none of this is true. And they were like, they had to do it. And so the fact checkers really started happening on Facebook and Twitter and everything. And I think Elon Musk has flipped that back around. He's got like community fact checker or something like that now, right? So like the people that are semi-trusted and popular on Twitter or X, whatever they call it these days, they actually put down little like community fact checks like, this story appears to be entirely made up, and there's nobody can source any of the details, and they'll slap it right on the end of like a CNN story. It's pretty funny actually. But yeah.
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad, but still, I mean, he's favoring approved people, Sure. It's a step in the right direction.
We're in the transitional area, buddy. Come on.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's things are getting better, right? I mean, Twitter was a total cabal operated operation, 5 years ago, and it's definitely moving in the right direction. But yeah, there's still a lot of room for improvement, no question about it. It just hit me like I think even YouTube did it to us, right? We, like we did a couple of flat Earth podcasts, and they get their little Wikipedia approved flat Earth is a known psyop and conspiracy theory, right? That's under some of our podcasts too, right?
Yeah, and even our Take Your Power Back manifesto got basically we got I think we got a strike or a warning or something like that for like health misinformation or something like that for saying that COVID was fake.
Right. Yeah. So you can see, right, they're desperately trying, right, to do that. And it looks ridiculous because anybody listening to our podcast is so far beyond what the experts have to say, right? So are they preparing for an influx of people that are, going to be just total Normieville and have no idea that what the crazy things we're saying? I don't know. But these are just examples of them trying to control the spread of, the lies that they're telling, by trying to let the people know that they're the experts and they don't ever spread misinformation, but we do. That's the basic message, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Universities, follow the money, cut the money, right? So universities all run on federal student loans, research grants that come from the federal government. I mean, it's basically all the universities and the government are hand in hand, right? Media runs on big pharma ads and government contracts, right? These aren't independent institutions. They're paid mouthpieces. Very simple. To fund the grants, eliminate federal student loan backing, watch the bloat collapse. No need to reform all of these. Just stop feeding them. Pretty simple, right?
Yeah, and I think the main thing feeding them is the desire in students to go and be a part of it and be a student there. Like, once that stops, doesn't matter whether they have grants or anything like that. It'd just be an empty building with a rambling leftist academic professors in them.
Right. And it's funny is we're kind of in that transitional era. I had a niece and nephew just graduated from college last year, And I desperately tried to talk them out of it, but that, I had to admit that college is a lot of fun and you meet cool people and party a lot and it's great. But the education part, worthless, and couldn't talk them out of it. But I got a couple of younger nieces that are getting closer. They're in sophomore, junior in high school, and they're thinking about not going to college. Like
Yeah,
seriously thinking about it.
I would advise anyone not to go to college. It's
Yeah,
absurd. Like you
still
can start achieving your thing at the moment you decide. Like you can start producing and learning yourself by so many means. You don't need to go sit 4 years and have people tell you a whole bunch of stuff and make you work and do homework for 4 years.
It's even sooner than that, right? Technically, if you believe Rudolf Steiner, right, then at age 14, right around age 14, as you break it, that's what teen angst starts, of course, pretty much, right? That's when you break out of the astral shell of your parents, and you're like ready. You're like 14-year-olds are ready to do stuff on their own, and you'd go back just 100, 150 years, right? That's the way it used to work, right? When the boys and girls hit 8th grade, they were, as far as they were concerned, they were done with schooling, right? Only the gifted mathematical or grammatical or whatever kids would go on, right, to further schooling, but the majority of kids, like 90+%, would go work on the farm or work for their sewing or whatever the heck they were doing. They were done with schooling in 8th grade.
That's interesting you mentioned 14 because I was just enraged when I was 14. And I used to be like on all accelerated mathematics, this and that, and then I just kind of just totally fell out of academic interest.
Right?
Well, maybe not totally, but a little bit by bit.
You had a big intellect pop out when you freed yourself from the parental astral thing that they were holding for you till 14. You're like, I'm ready to do huge stuff, and they're like, no, you're not. You're going to 9th grade, kid.
Yep. Yeah.
So yeah, that's a big part of teen angst. Anyway, that's the university thing. Let's see here. What do we got here? Parallel institutions are already winning. Homeschooling exploded post 2020. Yeah, both of my sisters started homeschooling, well, partially homeschooling their kids. Substacks are now outperforming legacy outlets now. Podcasters reach more people than cable news. The Rogan interview matters more than the 60 Minutes hit piece. We're not building alternatives. They're already built and scaling. Just keep feeding what works. Love that paragraph.
Yep. I'll just plug Ideal. I think it's worth doing.
Yeah.
I have personally built, and there's a podcast on it already on our website, a decentralized big tech video competitor that is as good as Instagram and YouTube. It's idealcontent.io. I mean, parallel institutions exist.
They're already here, and hopefully people will have heard that podcast before they hear this one, where you introduce it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and here, this is my last little bullet in this section is my own personal frustration thing why people don't see it. But I am demanding that we have defamation with teeth. And for those of you who don't know what defamation means, it's libel or slander, right? It's either spoken or written when you say something or write something about somebody else that is demonstrably untrue, right? So not an opinion piece, right? But if you're in the business of news. And what we have right now is literally the exact opposite. Anybody can say anything about Trump or Biden or Hillary or Obama or whatever, right? It's just constant people lying about everybody. And if you actually made people back up what they're saying with truth and force them to it by, literally massive defamation suits, if they couldn't, like the entire media landscape would change overnight. Completely.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So we're not saying censorship.
Sure.
Right?
And the defamation cases might be a part of it, but also people are just the desire to say negative things about people, like as you're raising consciousness, just disappears. Like, let me give you an example. I saw a video today of it's this clip where Yoko Ono is like in a concert kind of thing with Chuck Berry and John Lennon, and she's doing her Yoko Ono style stuff, and the comments, oh my god, it's just vicious, right? Everyone is just like hate, she's this, she's that, And I'm like, why do they want to say such mean stuff about her? Like, yeah, but why you want to be mean to her? So it just
Right.
disappears.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That's 100% true. And so if you're above 310, which Matt is, then of course that
Yes. Thanks,
it looks
Brad. I
ridiculous.
appreciate that, mate.
But the point is that in order to, in other words, let's not just go and wipe out the media and say, oh, they're all evil, bad, right? Just say, hey, these are the new rules, right? If you're going to report a piece, right, you got to back it up. You can't just sit there and say whatever you feel like saying about anybody that you don't like. Right?
Hmm.
You can say you don't like him. You just can't say, I think he's probably, a Nazi, right? Like how many people have said that about Hitler over the last, or I mean, about Trump over the last 10 years, right? Like millions of people have said that. And it's ridiculous. And if you said you can't do that anymore, that would force them, right, to change the way they report and what they say on air, which then in
Yeah,
turn
I
wouldn't get
think we'll
people all
see.
riled up.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I think what we'll see is the crowd getting riled up about defamation, right? Hey, you said something about someone and you can't prove that's true. You've done wrong against this person and you owe them a debt.
Right? There's just like there's like this unwritten rule that you can't sue for defamation. Like the judges just throw it out. Well, you're a celebrity, so you have to you have to allow it, right? There's this weird attitude like that.
I'll tell you, that's
I
not what
think.
happened to my mate when
Oh
Billy
yeah,
Mitchell
no, yeah,
sued my mate Carl Jobst.
right, yeah. Well, he's not a celebrity, right? And it's funny, like the whole January 6th thing. Trump just sued the BBC for like some stupid $20 billion or something for they edited his speech the day before the righties, the MAGA crowd, crashed the Congress building and that whole fake narrative from beginning to end, right? He sued them because they put together this little,
Mm.
very sinisterly edited video that made him look like he was saying, "Go down there and attack the building," right? And it took him 5 years to file the defamation suit. So anyway, that's my own little personal thing. Like I'm just saying, how could we let the media stay in place, but force them to be honest? This would be the way to do it, in my
Okay.
opinion. All
Okay,
right.
what's next?
So the next is the administrative state elimination, right? And then by administrative state, let's see what that means, right? Name the beast by its size. So there are literally over 800 federal agencies in the United States, 2+ million unelected bureaucrats. Most Americans couldn't even name 50 of those 800. The IRS, FBI, ATF, EPA, those are the famous ones. Ever heard of the Federal Coordinating Council of Science, Engineering, and Technology? The Office of Government Wide Policy? Neither has anyone else. They exist. They have budgets. They make rules you must follow. You didn't vote for any of them. And it was funny. There was a guy that walked around Washington D.C. For a couple days, and he was asking anybody and everybody, all the bureaucrats, if they could name all the administrative agencies, and everyone laughed and said, "Oh, nobody can." That's how ridiculous it is.
Hmm.
It's all fake. Unelected legislatures, the constitutional crime, right? These agencies don't just enforce law, they make it. So, the rule making authority, Congress passes a vague statute, an agency writes 10,000 pages of regulations with force of law. This is legislative power exercised by people you can't vote out. The founders would have started shooting by now. Thanks, Claude. Right? So basically all the lobbyists and the big pharma and big guns and big energy, right? They actually write all our statutes that become laws. Do you know that?
I assumed it.
Yeah. The congressmen are just going to parties and smoking cigars and drinking wine and living the good life, and
Oh, yeah.
their lobbyists just come in and say, "Here's what we want," and they hand them these 10,000 pages of legalese, and the
Yeah, I mean,
congressman
the
just
way it. Sorry, you finish and then I'll come in.
no, I was gonna say the congressmen just hand them over to their buddies, and they go, "Yeah, okay, well, yeah. That's a new law. Go ahead."
Well, the way it was obvious to me was just like there's so much written. And like, what? Are we supposed to believe that this congressman wrote it? Or his associates like sat there and wrote it? in his
Right,
little office? They just wrote it all? Come on.
right. And of course, we had the big omnibus bills and everything. We don't need to dive into that. But yeah, that's like nobody ever reads them. Someone tells you either vote yay or nay for this big bill coming up on the floor. No, literally, none of the people, our lawmakers, actually read the laws that they're making. That's the irony of it. Right. So we've already kind of tackled that, though. That gets blown away when everyone realizes that the congressmen and senators, their only job is to make sure that the government runs efficiently. They have nothing to do with us. That's it. It's very simple. All right. What's the next bullet? Don't reform, defund, and sunset. So every attempt to reform bureaucracy grows it. Reagan's Government Efficiency Commission added agencies. You don't trim the tumor, you cut it out. Automatic sunset provisions. Every agency must be reauthorized every 5 years or it dies. Watch Congress try to justify 800 reauthorizations. They can't, they won't. Problem solves itself. Yeah?
Sure. Okay. No problem. Just took me a while to comprehend that.
All right, next one. The quote, but who will, unquote, answers. Who will keep the food safe? Private certification already exists. Underwriters laboratories, kosher certification, organic certification. Companies that poison customers don't stay in business. Market accountability beats bureaucratic theater. Who will protect the environment? Property rights and tort law. You pollute my land, I sue you personally. Common law handled this for centuries before the EPA ever existed. Yeah?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, the whole marketplace and the whole economy is built around like all these controls and, you can sue people and everything's regulated and, I'm going to make a marketplace where people can sell things in their neighborhood outside of the legal system. And, I've thought about this, like, how do I make sure that everything's like proven to be safe and stuff like that? But it's like, the person 3 doors down made a cake and what, they got to comply with all these regulations and stuff. It's just like, no, we're going to build it. We're going to build trust back in, like this whole massive system of regulations is just a mess. And it's all built on a lack of trust, right? No one wants to trust the people they're buying from. Oh, and why should they? Because they want to buy at a cheaper price from people thousands of miles away from them, right? But if we restore just person to person, individual to individual, neighbor to neighbor trust, you can buy from your neighbors almost every single thing you need, keep money in your local neighborhood, and you get better quality, and you don't have to worry about all these, well, what if it's not complying with regulations? No, Doris, 3 doors down, made it. It's fine.
That's how it worked for millennia until this thing called federal government stepped in.
Yeah.
Interesting, huh?
Yeah.
It's not complicated at all, is it?
Yeah.
All right. What do we got here? The 50% rule. We got to start somewhere, right? So this is the part that everyone pushes against and fights against. But so you just can't eliminate everything overnight that's already in place, right? Sure, we get it, right? Across the board, you just cut everybody's budget by 50% right out of the gate. That'd be your starting point. I think you could do more, but let's just say 50% for argument's sake, right? Every agency, no negotiations, no exemptions, right? You basically force them to reorganize and prioritize. Then year 2, you cut 25% off of that 50%, and you just keep going like that. By the time you hit the 10-year mark, what's needed is there, and what's not has been trimmed away, right? And frankly, I would suspect that 99% of it will be gone in 10 years.
But how are you imagining to take the control of the budget cutting? Like, they control the budget, so how does someone cut a budget?
I mean, someone with a pair steps up and becomes the next elected official and says, here's where, like Ron Paul used to say this all the time. He used to say, we can cut 90% of the federal administrative state the day I step into office. Mm-hmm. Easily. 90%. That's probably a little aggressive, but that's the idea. I mean, none of this happens if everyone keeps sleeping through the fact that we're under tyrannical rulership, right? Mm-hmm. They just keep going to the voting, but thinking their votes count and thinking that these people have our best interest in mind. As long as that continues, right? As long as the majority of people are in that state of brainwashing, there's none of this works, right? And it won't work, and it won't happen either. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, I think we have the same differing on like almost every single point. It's just a reiteration of the same thing. Like you're suggesting someone has to go into government and reduce the budget, and I'm suggesting they can hike up the budget 1,000 times%, and we just ignore their offering and act like they don't exist.
Well, they can do it with their fake
Yeah.
fiat currency, right? But they can't do it with gold, right?
But eventually they'll have nowhere to spend their fake currency, you know?
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. The people that work for them have to be able to willing to accept it, right? And then if those people aren't
Yeah.
willing, then you know what I mean. There's this parallel system pushing them on them at all times. I mean, if you just took away the fake fiat currency system, the whole thing, 99% of the federal government would vanish, just be gone.
And I think a key point here is like, you know, we're suggesting it could go like this, it could go like that, could go like this, could go like that. We have really no way of knowing what way it actually will go, but as the consciousness rises, it'll ensure that it goes somewhere or another.
Yeah, well, we know it'll go away eventually. And the way it goes away is eventually is the determined by the mass consciousness rise, right? That is the mechanism that causes it to vanish. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
When enough people are above that 200, 250 line and start seeing through all the lies, then it just starts collapsing on its own. But again, there's still that fear that, crime and entitlements and everything people will just go crazy, chaos, if it collapses too fast or too hard. Excuse me.
Alrighty. So are we up to the next section now?
Yeah, let's try to get through this one.
Yeah, I suggest so. We're at 57 minutes approximately right now. So why don't we do this one? That'll take us a bit over the hour, and then maybe we can do a total of just two videos for this podcast. 53 part 1 and 2. All right.
So this is my criminal injustice law enforcement rebuild. 5 bullets. Right. So first of all, a police officer, right, or in other words, a policy officer, right? Pull that E off the end and put a Y on the back, versus peace officers. So the name is the giveaway. Police enforce the policies. Whose policies? Well, they're the ruler's policies, right? The statutes. Peace officers, they just keep the peace. That's their job. Make sure no one's breaking the golden rule, right? Very simple. Protect people from actual harm. So our current cops spend 90% of their time on revenue generation, right? Writing tickets to earn money for the state. So these are all victimless crimes, of course, right? Drugs, permits, codes. And they're serving basically as armed tax collectors as well, right? So if anybody isn't going to pay their taxes, then that's the policy officers go in and round them up and throw them in jail. So the actual violent crime clearance rate, according to Claude, it's under 50%. I think it's probably under 70%. But they're not feeling the protection.
What is this concept?
It's solving the crime. Whatever, petty theft, burglary, murder, assault, right? They don't spend a lot of time.
What is clearance rate? What is meant by that?
Solving the crime.
Okay, solving the crime is clearance. Okay, gotcha.
Right. So Claude says they're not failing at protection. Protection isn't their job. Their job is to enforce policies.
Absolutely. I mean, it's so obvious it's in the name. I mean, it's just right there. Police, policy. It's so
Action in the face.
Easy to see.
Right.
It's funny that they don't see it.
Now, here's what most people don't know, right? When the Constitution was written, right? And this is back in 1789, of course, right? The way the hierarchy of power was, the sheriff, right, is the most powerful person in your world, county sheriff. It's the only person that's been constitutionally recognized as a law enforcement officer, and of course his deputies, right? He's elected by the people, makes him accountable to the people, and the jurisdiction is supreme within the county. So the state police, if there was such a thing, or the state peace officers have no power over the sheriff of the county, right? Mm-hmm. Certainly not a national police force like the FBI, right? Yeah. Which is unnecessary and unneeded. Their job is to protect the rulers. That's what their real job is. So the sheriff can tell the federal agents to pound sand, and that's exactly what some actually do. There's a few sheriffs in America right now, a couple in Arizona, a couple in Texas, that won't let the FBI or any state police anywhere near their counties without their permission.
Right, good on.
Right? So one of the biggies that we spent a lot of time with when talking with Claude is, of course, the elimination of victimless crimes, right? Which would mean crime would plummet as a category in and of itself, right? So half the prison population is there for things that harm to nobody: drug possession, regulatory violations, tax crimes, licensing infractions, and just a whole long list of things that there was literally no injured party involved in them being imprisoned. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So these aren't really crimes, right? This is disobedience to our rulers. That's what most people are in prison for. Is they disobeyed their rulers that don't have any legitimate place in our lives, right? So you remove those from the books, and overnight your crime rate drops 50%. Your prison's empty, and actual peace officers can focus on protecting people from actual harm. How complicated is that?
Pretty simple.
Very simple. Community accountability replaces qualified immunity. A lot of people don't know what that means, but basically, the current system is, the police officers can brutalize someone, do something stupid, kill someone, blah, 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 and the department pays the settlement with taxpayer money. And the cop doesn't lose their job, by the way. That's what qualified immunity means. Because they are involved in these risky ventures, sometimes things go sideways. And we'll just pay off any time our police officers do something sideways, we'll just pay off the harmed party and pretend like it didn't happen. So that's the way it works right now. With printed out of thin air money that's collected by property taxes, which are completely illegitimate. But property taxes are rent. Who are we renting from? The queen or the king, technically, right? The cabal. That's who owns.
So you get abused, and then all you get is printed slave script.
Yep. How easy is that? I mean, that gives the police officers nearly carte blanche, right? Only the most heinous, absurd, ridiculous crimes that they have no choice but to, fire or imprison the bad actor. But that's, 1 out of 1,000 incidents. So you flip it around. So if you want to be a peace officer, right, then you are actually personally liable for all your misconduct, just like you are when you're not on your job, right? So whether you're on the job or you're not on the job, if you are behaving in ways that are criminal, then you're liable for them. That's very simple. So there's no hiding behind a badge, right? There's no insurance back, for doctors that carry malpractice, right? Bad actors become uninsurable, therefore unemployable. Market removes what bureaucracy protects. Nice.
Yeah, it's sometimes I think about who's going to be the last, groups of people to, actually experience this consciousness shift, and unfortunately, I think the police are going to be one of the last. Police, judges, lawyers, doctors, politicians. Yeah. So we got to endure this for a bit longer.
If they cling to it, right? If their identity is wrapped up in it, then for sure. And so this is the last biggie here, right? Is that people are afraid that this crime is going to be rampant. But, I tell people this all the time. The places where no one's allowed to have guns, like inner city, Chicago and New York and Boston, right? Those are the worst crime rates in the country. Baltimore, right? Where you're not allowed, you're not legally allowed to own a gun. That gives the criminals who can easily get guns, right? They can just run through households left and right with no fear of being retaliated against. Right? The places with the least amount of crime, right, are states like Texas and Florida, where it's totally legal to have a gun, and in Texas they actually have the defend your property thing. So if the cops show up and there's a burglar on your property that's dead, right? They're like, well, that was his fault for trespassing onto your into your house or onto your lawn or whatever. He should have known better. So that may not be the ideal solution, right? But you get the idea, right?
Mm-hmm.
So instead of waiting for the, go ahead.
No, you go.
was going to say, instead of waiting for and this is what's happening, is that we've all outsourced our authority and our power to these. Well, let's call the police and see if they handle it. Like, this thing that's happening down the street. Let's call the FBI and they'll come in and handle it. And how many times do they not handle it? Right? It seems like every other time that there's somehow or another you find this guy doing this bad thing and somehow he gets away with it. I mean, it doesn't even make any sense. But again, they're protecting their own. So the idea here is, of course, the armed citizenry is the first responder, right? When seconds count, police are minutes away. An armed homeowner is the first responder. The sheriff and peace officers are backup. This isn't wild, wild west fantasy. It's how it worked for most of American history and still works in rural areas today. Exposed. The disarmament agenda is about control, not safety. An armed society doesn't need a police state. The end.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this is one of the most difficult things for people to imagine, like this transition to anarchy kind of thing. What people can own guns, right? But then all the bad people are going to own guns like that. They have trouble seeing it work properly. Because like
the bad people already own guns.
Yeah, I know. It's very difficult for them to comprehend the whole topic, right? Like bad people who want to hurt people can get weapons to hurt people. No matter what. Doesn't matter about whether police exist. Doesn't matter about whether policies exist. Nothing going to stop that. All the policies are really doing is stopping the good people from having guns. You think about the most recent shooting, which was the Bondi Junction shooting in Sydney.
Oh, yeah.
Just imagine you're a good person who is, you look out for the people around you and you carry a gun with you. And that happens, Imagine how fast you're going to draw your gun and finish those guys off, like 2 seconds. 2 seconds.
Right.
But no, that's not allowed. and it's crazy to think like because this is really easy to comprehend, right? Really easy to envision, really easy to comprehend. Yeah, good people with guns would have ended that in 2 seconds. So it's strange when you think about, for example, the Australian politicians who in reaction to that are like, oh, we need stricter gun laws. It's strange to think about their consciousness and what's going on in their head that they would think that, and what sort of challenge it's going to be to reach them. Yikes.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if they're in those positions, they're way below 200 to begin with. And again, this goes back to the top of this podcast, right? People have to just recognize that perhaps gun laws are the most blatant example, right? Think about this, think about back in 1790 in America, and we hire our first, elect our first batch of congressmen and senators, and there's the thought that they were going to go in there and ban gun ownership or have an FBI checklist before you're out there on the settlement. And like, sorry, Charlie, you don't get to have a gun anymore, right? I mean, it's so ridiculous how it happened. It's hard to imagine how this happened, but that it's just a basic framework of the American society, and it was obvious and necessary. And it's in the Constitution. We need a strong armed citizenry to protect us against the tyrannical government, right? And somehow or another, right? Those words in the Constitution don't mean anything anymore. I wish I knew Australia's rules, but when did they ban guns there? In the 90s?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was mid-90s.
Right, just like America is one of the last place that it hasn't happened. It's kind of interesting that they couldn't pull it off here, but have really pulled it off almost everywhere else.
Okie dokie. Shall we conclude?
The short answer to your question is brainwashing. That's it.
Yeah.
You got to unbrainwash them.
No doubt about that. Okay, so let's conclude this part 1, and we'll pick it right back up in part 2.
Beautiful.
So just go on to the next video. That easy.
Excellent.
Anything you want to say before?
Thanks everybody for listening.
No,
sorry?
Brad's all good. You're all good, yeah?
Brad's all good.
Okay. Thanks everyone. See you in the next one. Just switch over right now. Part 2. See you then.